some lunch here, and I'll wait for Jed to let us know when we have a quorum.
Mr. Chair, a quorum is present.
Thank you, Jed. I'm Scott Merrick. This is Met Council TAC Planning, August 10th, 2023. We just have one agenda item today. Just some quick reminders. Mute your microphone if you're not speaking. And if you're able, turn your camera on, especially when you're speaking. And limit the use of chat. If you have a comment, please think about using the microphone. The first item on the agenda is approval of the agenda. Does anybody have any corrections or additions to the agenda today? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 2, approval of the July 13th, 2023 TAC Planning minutes. Would somebody like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
Elaine Kutsukos will move approval of the minutes.
Thank you, Elaine. Is there a second?
Dave Burns, I'll second that motion.
Thank you, David. Elaine moves, David seconds to approve the TAC minutes from the last meeting. Is there any discussion on the motion? If not, Jed, will you please take the roll?
Jack Johansson, Carver County.
Aye.
Grace Almeida, Suburban Transit. Bill Dermody, St. Paul. Bridget Reef, Metropolitan Airports Commission. Charlie Howley, City of Chanhassen. David Burns, Met Council MTS.
Aye.
Elaine Kutsukos, TAP Coordinator.
Aye.
Gina Medico, Dakota County.
Aye.
Innocent AO, Pollution Control Agency. Jack Forsland, Anoka County.
Aye.
Casey Atkins, Hennepin County.
Aye.
Kathleen Mayell, City of Minneapolis.
Aye.
Sarah Allen, Washington County.
Aye.
Ross Beckwith, City of West St. Paul.
Aye.
Lindsay Brewer, MnDOT.
Aye.
Michael Larson, Met Council Community Development.
Aye.
Nathan Abney, Scott County. Scott Merrick, Ramsey County.
Aye.
Patrick Haney, Metro Transit.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, there were 13 ayes, no noes, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Jed. So the TAC minutes of June 8th, 2023 are approved as presented. We'll move on to public comment. Jed, is there anyone that had indicated a request to comment on anything on the agenda today?
Mr. Chair, there were no requests to speak today.
All right, thank you, Jed. We'll move on to our one item of business. Agenda item 2023-44, adoption of the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. And we have David Burns and Amy Vennewitz presenting.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and TAC Planning members. David Burns, Planning Analyst with the Council. I'm just gonna, again, probably struggle to figure out how to share on WebEx. Can you all see that correctly?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So yeah, David Burns, as I mentioned, it is that time for the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program. So I'll just briefly kind of go over an overview, essentially what the content of the UPWP is, some of the planning studies continuing from this year, 2023, some of the planning studies that are going to begin in 2024, and show you like a draft budget. Not included in this is a last minute change where we're going to talk about the Complete Streets 2.5% allocation requirement. And then we'll hopefully get some discussion and input on that as we go through it. Feel free to interrupt me at any time as I go through this. I've done this probably like 5 years in a row now. So if there's anything I miss, it's because I've done it so often. So the UPWP really describes all of our work activities, our MPO work activities, and planning activities for the upcoming year. It's required by federal law for all MPOs, and really ultimately it stems from the goals and objectives in our 2040 and, as of next year, 2050 Transportation Policy Plan. It can also address some of the pressing issues or concerns expressed by our local planning partners. So the UPWP really serves to outline and detail those work activities that we'll perform in 2024, and it describes our transportation planning activities, the studies, consultant studies that we'll be undertaking, as well as including a fairly detailed budget of everything. And it really serves as an application we must submit in order to receive these federal transportation planning funds. So once approved by the council, it is submitted to MnDOT and both FHWA and FTA for their review and approval. So it's ultimately organized by the council. How we do it here is it's organized by 6 major categories: planning and programming process, modal systems planning, long range systems planning, travel forecasting and development, and short range planning and performance monitoring. And then we also have a category for non-federal planning funds, such as the use of funds we use for RELF and aviation. So kind of at the end of each section in the UPWP, we include a calculation of the total staff time and the associated cost, the consultant time and costs, the estimated expenditures, and total costs for consultant projects within the category. You can kind of see that on the right there under activity A. That's just kind of a screenshot of what it has: number of staff weeks, total budget, and then studies continuing into 2024, total budget for total activity budget for 2024. Some tasks are kind of part of the planning process and are ongoing and repeated every year. A good example is our TAC support process ease, and others change based on sort of regional needs and studies that we are undertaking, and consultant studies are always kind of a good example of that. In 2024, our total consulting budget exceeds 2 million. So just like this year, we have a pretty heavy load of consultant studies that we are going to be accomplishing in 2024. I'm going to briefly just kind of, not going to read these out, but these are some of the studies and contracts either beginning in 2023 and continuing into 2024, or beginning even potentially before 23, continuing into 24, or will begin in 2023 and continue into 2024. So you can see quite a heavy load of consultant studies that we will have just that have already started, that we'll be working on, continuing to work on in 2024. In terms of new planning studies for 2024, a regional sidewalk dataset phase 1 study to really get partner input and technical input more than anything on how to gather this sidewalk data, comprehensive sidewalk data set. The public transit and human services transportation coordinated plan update, microtransit policy framework study, TPP goal topic workshop, and evaluation of forecast accuracy and robustness study. Okay, so in the version of the UPWP sent to TAC Planning, we just kind of had placeholder text noting that we must allocate at least 2.5% of the budget to complete streets activities. This is a new federal requirement, and we have really not received a ton of guidance until just very recently from our federal partners. Not to upset our federal partners, but that is kind of the case. Complete streets is defined by the state as the planning, scoping, design, implementation, operation, and maintenance of roads in order to reasonably address the safety and accessibility needs of people of all ages and abilities using the transportation system. So all MPOs must allocate at least 2.5 of their total budget to complete streets activities. We looked at our tasks and subtasks and identified those subtasks bulleted on this slide as being complete streets related. We then went in and calculated the associated staff time, and we'll be looking at the associated consultant study time and documenting that. And I'm going to actually stop sharing this for the time being and share kind of where we're at in that process. So just give me 2 seconds. Okay, if you can see that this table was not filled out previously on the version sent to TAC Planning. Again, very late guidance. We've calculated an approximate number of staff weeks and then the staff cost associated with those weeks. So, you know, for the planning and programming process, remember, we only have to get to about 2.5%, but we're probably going to run between 15 and 20% of our total budget to complete streets related activities when all is said and done. We have about 75% or 75 staff weeks out of 413. And a lot of that is like the regional solicitation type activities, which do include complete streets components. So that's about 13%. Modal systems planning, you know, that's bike ped planning, transit planning, even highway planning. A lot of those have complete streets components. We actually have 135 staff weeks associated with that, which is about 39% of the total staff weeks for task B. Long range systems planning, we have about 95 staff weeks, which is about 27% of our total staff weeks in that category. And this one's going to be bumped up significantly, in particular because this includes the congestion management process, which is going to include a lot of complete streets principles moving forward, and really in the past. The short range planning and monitoring, we have that as about 18% or 26 staff weeks. So we would actually just, you know, like some feedback on whether some of those associated subtasks might look like they need to have more staff weeks associated with them, or just general thoughts on this process of allocating staff weeks.
I had a question, David.
Mhm.
Appreciate the context here and the information. So the hours that you're proposing for safe routes to school here, are you really just allocating time to work that you were already planning to accomplish, or is this kind of new work that you would otherwise not be doing, or is it a combination of both kind of?
Yeah, that's a great question. Honestly, we've been doing complete streets related activities for a number of years, so this is really just accounting for what we've already done. I mean, we're well above that 2.5% federal threshold. So we really didn't need to integrate any new activities, although we're more than happy to do so. Should the committee have any recommendations? But yeah, this is really more of a summary of our existing activities.
And maybe just one follow-up to that, if I could. The new active transportation program from the state, it seems like that would sort of align with the safe routes principles and thought process. So would any of that work align with the safe routes?
Yes, that is reflected in Task A, the planning and programming process. So yeah, we did identify active transportation.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions from the group about the safe routes element to the program?
Scott, this is Amy, if I might make a couple comments. Just to clarify, it's complete streets activities, not specifically safe routes to school. So safe routes to school would fall under the large umbrella of complete streets. I think what we're dealing with here a little bit is the feds think of it as complete streets related activities, right? So even in our MPO, we don't have a lot of reference, if any, to the words complete streets don't necessarily flow throughout our work or our documents. But much of our work, whether it's transit planning, bike and ped planning, the active transportation, the new money that we're going to be spending a lot of time next year talking about, that clearly relates to complete streets concepts. So at this point, what we're trying to kind of demonstrate is that we have a lot of staff hours, and eventually we'll fill in some consultant costs there too. It's hard to be super precise of exactly this is all complete streets and this is not. It's a really fine line. And what we're doing is just documenting that we spend a significant amount of time kind of on these types of activities, whether it's active transportation, roadway safety, transit, bike and ped, freight even falls under complete streets. So at this point, we know we're well above 2.5% of our staff time and our consultant budget. And that's really what the feds need us to document. I think part of your other question though was, did we add anything? And at this point, we have not added anything to the work program. We did add the active transportation work after the session, and that will be a significant amount of the regional solicitation evaluation. But if there are activities that we're missing or that we're not already doing, I think that is one thing we could use some feedback on. If there's something the region would want developed very specifically related to complete streets, that is something that could appear in the UPWP. Whereas right now, it's just generally across our activities. I think if you had to pick one activity that is most specifically, well, other than the regional solicitation work, related to complete streets, it would be the new study or the new work that Dave is going to lead implementing pilot corridor analyses under the congestion management process. And that work is really almost 100% complete streets related, and those corridor analyses will be. So that's kind of a broad answer, but right now there isn't anything we have specifically added in response to that federal requirement.
Yeah, thanks for that, Amy, and thanks for correcting me. I misspoke. It is actually complete streets and not just safe routes to school. So there's lots of multimodal elements that fall under the umbrella of complete streets, like Amy mentioned. So does anybody have any thoughts right now? Otherwise, I'm sure the staff would be willing to accept comments later if you do have any ideas about how the MPO could support your work with complete streets. Not hearing anything, David, so we could probably continue if you'd like.
Yeah, great. Just gonna swoop back to the PowerPoint.
I did see Josh came on. I don't know if
Oh.
he had a comment on this.
Oh, no comment at this point. I just turned my video on just in case there was any comments directed towards FHWA. So, no, I think it looks good, and we're, this is a new requirement, and we anticipate that pretty much all the MPLs are going to be able to meet that 2.5. It's just the documentation in the UPWP that we're now looking for. So.
Great, thank you, Josh. So here's the draft budget, total staff weeks there at the bottom, associated salary cost, consultant costs. Those are specifically for consultant-led studies, and then our overhead and expenses. Our overhead rate over the past few years has fluctuated significantly, all the way from I think a new low this year of 29% to 170%. We're still anticipating that's going to balance out at some point and become more consistent. It hasn't quite happened yet. So we were initially kind of budgeting for more around 80%. And then when we found out that our indirect or overhead rate was 29%, we found ourselves with significantly more money than we had been prepared to spend. So we did receive confirmation from Mintot today that some $400,000 of FTA planning funds are going to remain unbudgeted. That is reflected in this budget, and that will be used by the council in future years. So you're also seeing a pretty significant increase due to IIJA. And so overall, we have about 5.6 million in federal planning funds. And then, of course, the local match, bringing our total cost to about 7.3 million. Anyone has any questions on that, I'm happy to answer that as well. But that's really the last slide. So yeah, I'm more than happy to open it up for questions, concerns, and feedback.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions for David or Amy about the UPWP, the financial breakdown, or any of the tasks? The full report, I believe, was also sent out prior to the meeting, so if you had a chance to skim through that. Otherwise, I think the recommended motion is that the TAC Planning Committee recommend adoption of the 2024 Unified Planning Work Program attached. And David, would this go to F&P or directly to TAC, or what would be the next step in the process?
Yeah, great question. TAC is the next step in the process.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this is Innocent Ayo.
Yeah, Innocent, go ahead.
Okay. So I haven't had time to provide review and comments, so I'm planning to do that. And I just want to point out, because I already see from the section we have presented so far, I didn't see anything like in the previous regarding air quality and climate change. So that we used to kind of coordinate. Probably it's in the full document. I haven't had time to look through that yet. And the reason is that this past legislative session, they sent us new bill, 6 new bills on air quality, mostly cumulative impacts, air toxic rules, and reporting. The new one, which will be working to leading to clean transportation fuel standard, that we have to kind of generate a report, send report to the legislature by February 21st. And also most of these kind of relate to EJ areas and communities, because even though we non-attainment or we are attainment area for CO and some other pollutants, but from the research from PCA and Department of Health, we found that most of the EJ areas in the state, the concentration is much higher. Most of these pollutants, and also the higher than the health outcomes set up by the state. In addition, in the federal level, EPA have proposing to tighten the standard for PM 2.5 and also ozone. And from the level consideration we have now from a monitoring place, quite close, if they reduce to about 8 or lower than that. Then also they have just proposed multi-pollutant reduction by tightening the standard requirement for heavy duty vehicles, light duty, and mid duty. Can affect the standard operation in the state. So we kind of working. We have some group with not only Met Council but MnDOT, Department of Health, trying to see what ways or strategic initiative we can use to ensure that we do not get into non-attainment area anymore. So I believe there should be some emphasis on the UPWP in terms of air quality, climate change, and I know the 2 agencies or more than other agencies, we kind of working in coordination on these areas. So that's what I have, but I haven't read the entire thing, so maybe there's something in there. Thank you.
Thanks, Ines. And I guess I don't know if there was a specific question in there other than just, I guess, curiosity about the climate change and air quality work. Do you have any, like, a quick executive summary of that, David?
It looks like Amy has her hand up.
Okay, go ahead, Amy.
Sure, Mr. Chair and Innocent. So within the document, work task area C, the long range planning, that it has a number of subtasks in there. One of the subtasks is equity work related, and one of them is air quality and climate change related activities. And so those 2, and then one of them is the TPP, which is developing long range goals and objectives, which has both of those subjects as long range goals. So we do have a lot of activities in that area. And I would suggest maybe, Innocent, if you could look that over. They're kind of generally discussed. And so what we do is, this is kind of what we're budgeting staff time for. We don't, and then we do have a equity related specific project, which is non-federally funded. And so I would ask maybe that you look over that work. We also have 2 electrification projects that we're funding next year. And also we refer to our coordinating activities with MnDOT's work. And those new climate assessments that came as part of the state legislation are mentioned in the activities too. So those tasks generally cover kind of broadly what we're going to be doing in that area of both equity, air quality, climate change. And if there are things that you would think we should add as references, we can do that. Generally, if there are activities, particularly with the MPCA, that are not federally funded, those do not need to be in the UPWP. So this document is really to cover what are we doing with the federal planning funds and how are we expending them. But we can change any of those references if you think we should.
Okay, I would do that. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Amy. And there's a question here in the chat from Kathleen Mayhill, who had to drop off for a meeting, but she was just asking about process. And are we being asked to adopt the draft UPWP or the final? And she asked the question because she anticipates the city of Minneapolis wanting to submit comments and notes that the draft has not been released for public comment yet. So I don't know, process-wise, David, could you speak to that?
Absolutely. I was just going to recommend that we maybe change that recommended motion to say recommend adoption of the 2024 UPWP pending feedback from our state and federal partners, the public, as well as completion of that complete streets related budget item.
Dave and Mr. Chair, if I might, we could just shorten that pending public comment.
Yeah.
And it probably should say draft 2024 UPWP. Quick reminder of the process we're using. So the TAC process is to bring documents in front of the committees and get comments. We are here for technical comments. When we receive comments from the technical committees, the document might change. Then it goes to the next committee with any changes recommended by TAC Planning. Similarly, TAC has the opportunity to comment and give us technical input on suggested changes, which would then go to TAB and we would reference changes recommended by TAC. So this is a process in which we expect comments and change. And then the final adopter is the Met Council. So when we go to the Met Council, we say, we got some comments from TAC Planning, we got some comments from TAC, we got comments from TAB, we got public comments. Here are all of the changes that have been made in regards to the technical input and to the public input. So we bring it all together for the final adoption, which occurs at the Met Council. And that is similar to how a lot of other things move through our process. So when it is in front of TAC Planning, this is not a final document. We are here for your input and suggested change, and then we'll take it forward from there and oftentimes make those changes.
Thank you, Amy. That's a good summary. So essentially, this is the first step in a multi-layered review process that will ultimately be approved by the Met Council Transportation Board later this year. So again, the recommended motion as amended would be to recommend adoption of the 2024 draft Unified Planning Work Program subject to public input. And I would ask or open it up for somebody to make that motion if they're interested.
This is Larson, so moved.
Thank you, Michael. Is there a second?
This Innocent seconded.
Thank you. And is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, Jed, could you please take the roll?
Yes. Johansson,
Aye.
Almeida, Dermody, Reef, Howley, Burns,
Aye.
Katsukos,
Aye.
Hideko,
Aye.
Ao,
Aye.
Forsland,
Aye.
Atkins,
Aye.
Mayel, Allen,
Aye.
Beckwith,
Aye.
Brewer, Lindsay Brewer,
Aye.
Larson,
Aye.
Apney, Merrick,
Aye.
Haney.
Aye.
Mr. Chair, there were 13 ayes, no nos, and no abstentions.
Thank you, Jed. So that motion is approved. The draft UPWP will be forwarded on to TAC for further consideration. And then from there on the tab and the Met Council board. And I believe that is the only agenda item we had today. So thank you everybody for joining. And we're going to be hopping off here in a minute to continue our discussion at the TPP work group. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.